You see them first as glints against the sun. Standing on the bridge of your heavy cruiser in the pre-dawn darkness of October 25, 1944, you scan the horizon through your binoculars. The sea stretches endlessly before you, painted silver by the rising sun. Your ship cuts through the swells with steady purpose, part of Admiral Kurita's center force, the most powerful naval formation the Imperial Japanese Navy has assembled in months. 4 battleships, including the mighty Yamato, 6 heavy cruisers like yours, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. You are the spear point of Operation Sho-Go, Japan's desperate gamble to destroy the American landing forces at Leyte Gulf. The plan seemed brilliant in its complexity when Admiral Toyota explained it just days ago. While Admiral Ozawa's carrier force would lure away the American fast carriers to the north, and Admiral Nishimura's force would strike from the south through Surigao Strait, your center force would punch through San Bernardino Strait and fall upon the vulnerable American transports like wolves among sheep. Victory here could change the entire course of the war in the Pacific. But already, the plan is unraveling. 2 nights ago, American submarines caught your force in Palawan Passage. You watched in horror as the flagship Otago exploded and sank, taking Admiral Kurita's original staff with her. The Maya followed moments later, her magazines detonating in a pillar of fire that lit the night sky. The Takao, crippled and burning, had to turn back. Your formation pressed on, but the element of surprise was lost. Yesterday in the Sibuyan Sea, the American carrier planes found you again. Wave after wave of Hellcats, Helldivers, and Avengers swept down from the clouds. You watched the pride of the Imperial Navy, the super battleship Musashi, slowly succumb to torpedo after torpedo, bomb after bomb. She rolled over and sank with over 1,000 men, taking with her the myth of Japanese naval invincibility. Kurita had ordered a temporary withdrawal, but as night fell, he turned your battered force around once more. The Emperor's will must be done. Now, as dawn breaks over the Philippine Sea, you are almost through San Bernardino Strait. The American fast carriers are supposedly far to the north, chasing Ozawa's decoy force. Between you and the helpless transports at Leyte Gulf stand only a few patrol planes and whatever escort vessels the Americans have left behind. Easy prey for your guns. You adjust your cap against the morning breeze and check your watch. 0630 hours. Soon you will emerge from the strait and begin the final approach. Your guns are loaded, your crew at battle stations. After months of retreat and defensive fighting, the Imperial Navy will finally strike a decisive blow. That's when you see them, those glints against the sun. At first, you think they might be seabirds catching the light. But they're moving too purposefully, too fast. You raise your binoculars again, focusing on the distant specks. Your blood runs cold as the truth becomes clear. Aircraft. You shout to the bridge crew. Bearing 320 distance, but before you can finish the bearing report, the lookouts in the crow's nest are screaming into their voice tubes. The air raid sirens begin their banshee wail across your ship. Through your binoculars, you count them, dozens of aircraft climbing into the morning sky like a swarm of angry insects disturbed from their nest. But these aren't the fast fleet carriers you expected to be far away. These planes are rising from small, boxy ships on the horizon, escort carriers, the Americans call them, baby flat tops built on merchant hulls. You've read the intelligence reports dismissing them as obsolete, suitable only for anti-submarine patrols and ferrying aircraft. Their planes are supposedly flown by inexperienced pilots, their armament light and ineffective. Yet here they are, climbing toward your magnificent fleet like David approaching Goliath. Signal Admiral Kurita. You order your communications officer. Enemy escort carriers sighted. We are engaging. You move to the starboard wing of the bridge to get a better view of the approaching aircraft. Through your binoculars, you can make out the distinctive profiles. Stubby Wildcats and Avengers, some Hellcats mixed in. They're spreading out in a coordinated attack pattern, despite what the intelligence reports claimed about their supposed inexperience. Your stomach tightens with an unfamiliar sensation, doubt. The first explosions bloom around your formation as the lead aircraft dive. Yamato's massive anti-aircraft guns join the chorus, filling the sky with black puffs of flak. The sound rolls across the water like continuous thunder. Tracers from your own ship streak upward in glowing arcs, creating a deadly web of fire between sea and sky. But the American pilots keep coming. You watch in fascination and growing horror as a stubby Wildcat dives through the flak, its wings sparkling with machine gun fire. Bullets rake your cruiser's forward deck, sending sparks flying from the gun shields. A torpedo bomber follows close behind, skimming so low over the waves that its propeller wash kicks up spray. The torpedo drops into the water just 200 meters away, its wake heading straight for your port beam. Hard to starboard. You bellow to the helmsman. Emergency turn. Your ship heels over in a desperate evasion, and you grip the bridge railing as the torpedo passes just meters from your stern. The wake disappears into the distance, but already another Avenger is lining up for its attack run. This is not how the battle was supposed to unfold. You had expected to catch the Americans by surprise, to rain shells down on helpless transports while their escorts scattered in panic. Instead, you find yourself under attack by an enemy who seems to know exactly where you are and what you're trying to do. These obsolete escort carriers have managed to launch a coordinated strike faster than you thought possible. The morning sun climbs higher, and with it comes wave after wave of American aircraft. You lose count of how many times the attack sirens sound. Your anti-aircraft crews work their guns with desperate efficiency, but for every plane they shoot down, two more seem to take its place. The sea around your formation becomes a churning cauldron of bomb splashes, torpedo wakes, and falling debris. Through it all, you maintain your heading toward the transport area. This is what you've trained for, what the Empire demands. Your cruiser's 8-inch guns remain trained forward, ready to rain destruction on the American landing ships. But those guns seem increasingly irrelevant as the air attacks intensify. A massive explosion rocks the heavy cruiser Suzuya off your port beam. Through the smoke and flame, you can see her listing heavily to starboard. Another of your consorts, the Chikuma, is streaming black smoke from her forward magazines. The destroyers zigzag frantically through the formation, their smaller guns adding to the wall of anti-aircraft fire. But the American pilots press their attacks with a ferocity that staggers you. "Captain," your gunnery officer calls out. "Permission to engage the escort carriers?" You swing your binoculars toward the distant American ships. They're so small, so fragile looking compared to your heavy units. Yet from their decks continues to pour this relentless stream of aircraft that's tearing your formation apart. The irony isn't lost on you. These merchant conversions, these baby flat tops, are doing what the entire American Pacific Fleet couldn't accomplish in the previous day's battle. Range to the enemy carriers, 18,000 meters in closing. Sir, still too far for effective fire, but getting closer. Your main battery could smash those thin-skinned ships to splinters if you could get within range. You just have to survive the air attacks long enough to bring your guns to bear. But survival is becoming increasingly questionable. A Helldiver screams down out of the sun. It's the so steep you're certain the pilot will never pull out in time. The 1,000-pound bomb releases just as the plane begins its recovery, and you have a perfect view of the weapon tumbling end over end toward your ship. Time seems suspended as you watch death approach in slow motion. The bomb strikes your number 2 turret with a sound like the world ending. The explosion lifts the massive gun mount completely off its barbette and hurls it into the sea. Fragments of steel ring against the bridge windows like hail. When the smoke clears, a gaping hole remains where your main armament used to be. Below decks, you can hear the screams of wounded men and the roar of spreading fires. This is madness. You're being destroyed piecemeal by aircraft launched from ships that shouldn't even be in these waters. Where is the American fast carrier force? Where are Halsey's big fleet carriers that were supposed to be chasing Admiral Ozawa's decoy force to the north? How can these insignificant escort carriers be putting up such a coordinated and devastating defense? You don't yet know that Admiral Halsey has indeed taken the bait, steaming north with his powerful Third Fleet in pursuit of Ozawa's empty carriers. You don't know that what you're facing is Task Unit 77.4. 3, Taffy 3, under Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague, consisting of 6 escort carriers, 3 destroyers, and 4 destroyer escorts. The smallest and most vulnerable of the American units covering the Leyte Gulf invasion. What you do know is that these supposedly inferior ships and inexperienced pilots are fighting with a skill and courage that matches anything you've encountered in 3 years of war. Their attack coordination is flawless, their targeting precise, their determination absolute. Whatever intelligence reports claimed about escort carrier capabilities, those reports were catastrophically wrong. Another wave of torpedo bombers comes in low on the water, and you count at least 8 Avengers in the formation. Your remaining anti-aircraft guns hammer away, but the pilots maintain their approach through the flat. Geysers of water rise around your ship as near-miss bombs detonate in the sea. The concussions shake your cruiser's hull like a child's toy. Damage report. You call to your executive officer. Number 2 turret destroyed. Fires in the forward magazines contained. Flooding in compartments 7 and 8. We've lost steering control. Shifting to after steering. You nod grimly and return your attention to the battle. The American attacks continue with mechanical precision. As soon as one wave of aircraft completes its run and turns away, another appears on the horizon. It's as if those distant escort carriers possess unlimited aircraft and unlimited pilots willing to fly them into the teeth of your formation's anti-aircraft fire. The heavy cruiser Chokai, Admiral Kurita's current flagship, takes a devastating hit from a 500-pound bomb that penetrates her engineering spaces. She drops out of formation, dead in the water and burning fiercely. Through your binoculars, you can see Admiral Kurita and his staff transferring to the destroyer Noaki. Even your force commander is being driven from ship to ship by these obsolete American aircraft. But it's not just D-bombs and torpedoes that are destroying your formation. It's the constant pressure, the relentless nature of the attacks. Your crews can't maintain battle stations indefinitely under this kind of assault. Men are collapsing from exhaustion at their guns. Damage control parties are overwhelmed by the number of fires and flooding compartments. Your ship's structural integrity is being compromised by near-miss after near-miss. And still the aircraft keep coming. You check your chronometer, 0730 hours. The battle has been raging for an hour, yet it feels like a lifetime. Your formation, which entered these waters as the pride of the Imperial Navy, is being systematically dismantled by forces you were told didn't exist. A lookout's voice crackles over the intercom. Destroyer attack. Bearing 090. You swing your glasses to starboard and feel your heart sink further. 3 American destroyers are charging straight toward your formation, black smoke pouring from their stacks as they work up to flank speed. Even at this distance, you can see the white water curling back from their bows. They're coming in for a torpedo attack, adding surface combat to the air assault that's already overwhelming your defenses. This is unprecedented. In every previous engagement, American destroyers have maintained respectful distances from Japanese heavy units, relying on their speed and maneuverability to launch long-range torpedo attacks before withdrawing. But these 3 ships are boring straight in, apparently intent on close-range combat with your cruisers and battleships. Signaled the formation, you order. Concentrate fire on the approaching destroyers. But even as you give the order, you know it's futile. Your main battery is already engaged with the escort carriers. Your secondary guns are fully occupied with anti-aircraft fire. The American destroyer attack is perfectly timed to exploit the chaos created by the airstrikes. The lead destroyer, you can make out her pennant number now 557, opens fire with her forward 5-inch guns. The shells fall short, but she's closing fast. Behind her, the other 2 destroyers spread out in attack formation. You realize with growing dread that these American captains are willing to sacrifice their ships to protect those escort carriers. And they just might succeed. The destroyer with pennant number 557 disappears behind a wall of splashes as your formation's guns finally find their range. But when the spray clears, she's still there, still coming, her forward guns still firing. A shell from one of your battleships strikes her amidships, and for a moment she's hidden in smoke and flame. Yet incredibly, she emerges from the clouds still underway, still shooting. You've never seen such determination, such willingness to face impossible odds. This single destroyer is charging into the guns of 4 battleships and 6 cruisers, and her captain shows no signs of turning away. It's magnificent and terrible at the same time. The torpedo spreads are in the water now. You can see the wakes converging on your formation from multiple directions. The American destroyers have managed to launch their fish despite taking devastating fire from your heavy guns. One of the destroyers, the 557 ship, is clearly doomed, wreathed in smoke and listing heavily. But her sacrifice has drawn fire away from the aircraft and allowed the torpedo attack to proceed. Torpedoes in the water. Your executive officer reports unnecessarily. You can see them clearly now, white trails in the blue-green sea, spreading like fingers of death through your formation. The battleship Yamato turns hard to port to avoid the torpedo spread, her massive bulk heeling over from the violent maneuver. The movement takes her away from the escort carriers, away from your primary target. Other ships in the formation follow suit, the neat battle line dissolving into individual ships maneuvering desperately to avoid the converging torpedo wakes. This is not how naval battles are supposed to be fought. This is chaos, confusion, individual ships fighting for survival rather than maintaining formation discipline. The Americans have somehow managed to turn your overwhelming superiority and firepower into a liability, forcing your heavy units to evade rather than attack. And through it all, the aircraft keep coming. Another wave of dive bombers appears overhead, Helldivers this time, their distinctive gull wings silhouetted against the morning sun. Your anti-aircraft crews, already exhausted from an hour of continuous firing, gamely swing their guns skyward. But their rate of fire has slackened noticeably, and several gun positions are completely silent, either destroyed or abandoned. You watch the lead bomber push over into its dive, the pilot clearly visible in his cockpit as he lines up on your ship. The aircraft grows larger and larger in your binoculars until you can make out individual rivets on its wings. At the last possible moment, the bomb releases, and the Helldiver pulls up so close to your bridge that you can see the pilot's face behind his oxygen mask. The bomb strikes your ship just forward of the bridge, and the explosion throws you against the chart table. Your ears ring from the concussion, and when you struggle to your feet, you find blood running down your face from flying glass. Through the shattered bridge windows, you can see that your forward superstructure is a twisted ruin of metal and flame. Captain, your communications officer shouts over the noise of destruction. Signal from Admiral Kurita. All ships, withdraw to the north. Withdraw. The word hits you like a physical blow. After all the planning, all the sacrifice, all the losses sustained to reach this point, you're being ordered to retreat. Not because the enemy has superior firepower. Your formation still outguns the American escort force by an enormous margin. But because a handful of escort carriers and their obsolete aircraft have made continued advance impossible. You look through your binoculars one last time at the distant American ships. They seem so small, so vulnerable. If you could have reached them with your main batteries, you could have obliterated them in minutes. But they never gave you that chance. Instead, they used their aircraft and their escorts to create a wall of steel and fire that your formation couldn't penetrate. Acknowledge the signal. You tell your communications officer, come left to heading 350. All ahead full. As your battered cruiser turns away from the battle, you can't help but notice that the American air attacks are slackening. Perhaps they've expended their ordnance, or perhaps they're satisfied with driving off your force. Either way, the swarm of angry insects that rose from those tiny carriers has accomplished the impossible. They've stopped the most powerful surface force the Imperial Japanese Navy could assemble. Behind you, columns of black smoke mark the graves of Japanese warships. The heavy cruiser Suzuya has rolled over and sunk. The Chokai is burning from bow to stern, clearly doomed. The Chikuma is listing heavily and falling behind. Even among your surviving ships, damage is extensive. Your own cruiser has lost most of her forward armament and taken flooding in multiple compartments. The Americans, meanwhile, appear to have lost only one escort carrier and a handful of escorts. Their main force remains intact, still capable of supporting the late invasion. What should have been a devastating blow against American logistics has instead turned into another costly defeat for the Imperial Navy. You lean against the bridge railing and watch the escort carriers disappearing over the horizon. In the intelligence briefings, they were dismissed as secondary targets, hardly worth the attention of your heavy guns. But today, you've learned that there are no secondary targets in this war, no easy victories, no opponents who can be safely underestimated. Those baby flat tops and their supposedly inexperienced aircrews have just taught the Imperial Japanese Navy a lesson in modern naval warfare. In this new age of carrier aviation, size and armament matter less than flexibility and coordination. The massive guns of your battleships and cruisers are useless if you can't get close enough to use them. And getting close enough is exactly what these American escort carriers prevented. The morning sun climbs higher as your diminished formation retreats northward. Behind you lies the wreckage of another Japanese naval defeat, another step closer to the inevitable end. Operation Sho-Go, Japan's last great naval offensive, has failed completely. The center force has been turned back. The southern force destroyed in Surigao Strait, the northern force's carriers sunk off Cape Engano. You think about the young pilots who flew those American aircraft, diving through intense anti-aircraft fire but to protect their floating bases. Many of them probably never expected to survive their attacks on your heavy units. Yet, they pressed home their runs with a skill and courage that commanded your professional respect, even as it sealed your defeat. The Battle of Leyte Gulf is over, though you don't yet know its full scope. You don't know that you've just participated in the largest naval engagement in history, involving over 300 ships and 200,000 sailors from both sides. You don't know that Japanese naval aviation has been virtually eliminated as an effective force. You don't know that the sinking of Admiral Ozawa's carriers has removed Japan's last hope of conducting major offensive operations at sea. What you do know is that you've witnessed something unprecedented. A handful of escort carriers and their aircraft turning back a vastly superior surface force through sheer determination and tactical skill. The American pilots and sailors who fought today have demonstrated that there are no obsolete units in war, only obsolete thinking. As your ship limps toward home waters, trailing oil and debris, you realize that the war in the Pacific has reached its climax. The Imperial Navy that sailed out with such confidence to implement Operation Sho-Go no longer exists as an effective fighting force. Japan's lifeline to the oil and raw materials of Southeast Asia has been cut forever. The liberation of the Philippines will proceed unhindered. You remove your cap and bow slightly toward the southern horizon, a gesture of respect for worthy opponents. Those American aircrews showed you what real naval aviation could accomplish when properly coordinated and courageously executed. They rose from their small carriers like a swarm of angry insects, and they stung the pride of the Imperial Navy to death. The sun continues its climb toward noon as your damaged cruiser heads north, away from the scene of Japan's final naval defeat. Behind you, the waters of Leyte Gulf run red with the blood of empires, while overhead, the last American aircraft circle like victorious eagles before returning to their floating nests. In the end, it wasn't the massive guns of battleships or the armor of heavy cruisers that decided the Battle of Leyte Gulf. It was the courage of young men in fragile aircraft, rising from ships you had dismissed as obsolete, fighting with a skill and determination that turned the tide of history itself. You had seen them first as glints against the sun, then as a swarm of angry insects. Now you know them for what they truly were, the instrument of your defeat, and the heralds of a new age in naval warfare where aircraft carriers, not battleships, would rule the seas. The cost of this lesson has been written in fire and blood across the waters of the Philippine Sea. As your battered ship disappears over the northern horizon, the smoke from burning Japanese warships continues to rise into the tropical sky, marking the end of an era and the beginning of America's final drive toward the home islands of Japan. The swarm of angry insects had done their work well.